up! I can't get out! Somebody please! It's pulling me down! Shh, it's okay. I'm here.
Bob, I'm so scared.
I know. I've got you.
He had no idea that before dawn, his life would be turned upside down forever. His name was Sola, a hardworking man by his own definition. He believed strength meant silence, that love was proven by providing food on the table, not by gentle words. His wife, Amara, was heavy with child, her body changing every day, her strength quietly slipping in ways she did not know how to explain. She woke before sunrise, moved slowly through the house and rested more often now. To Sola, rest looked like weakness. To him, pregnancy was not an excuse. His mother had worked until the day she gave birth, or so he remembered. That evening the house felt tense. The pot on the fire was late. The floor remained unswept. Sola returned from a long day tired and hungry, his patience already worn thin by the dust and noise of the road. When he looked around and saw Amara sitting, one hand on her belly, breathing slowly, something inside him snapped. He did not ask how she felt. He did not notice the pain in her eyes. The word lazy left his mouth sharply, like it had been waiting. Amara did not shout. She did not argue. She simply looked at him, her eyes glassy, her lips trembling as if she wanted to speak but could not find the strength. Slowly she stood up, her movements careful, and walked into the bedroom. That silence should have warned him. Instead, Sola felt justified. In his mind he had spoken the truth. He ate his meal alone, the sound of his chewing loud in the quiet room. Night fell heavier than usual. The wind picked up, rattling the old windows. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled low and angry. Sola lay on the mat, staring at the ceiling, irritation slowly giving way to something uncomfortable. Amara had not come out. She had not eaten. He told himself she was being dramatic. Still, the house felt different, like it was holding its breath. Hours passed. The storm grew closer. Rain began to fall hard, drumming against the roof. Sola finally stood up, annoyed more than concerned, and walked toward the bedroom. He expected to find Amara asleep or pretending to be. But when he pushed the door open, the room was empty. Her wrapper was gone. Her sandals were not by the door. For the first time that night, fear crept in. He called her name once, then louder. No answer. The rain swallowed his voice. His heart began to race as thoughts he did not want pushed their way into his mind. She was pregnant. It was night. The storm was growing worse. Where would she go? Sola stepped outside into the rain, calling her name again, his voice shaking now. The path outside the house was slick with mud. Each step felt heavier than the last. With every second that passed, his words replayed in his head. Lazy, lazy, lazy. They sounded different now. They sounded cruel. As lightning flashed across the sky, Sola realized something that made his chest tighten. He had been so busy proving he was a man that he forgot how to be a husband. And somewhere in that dark, rain-soaked night, his pregnant wife was alone. Whatever was about to happen next would not just test his courage, but his heart. And before the night was over, Sola would learn a lesson that no amount of hard work could protect him from. The rain soaked through Sola's clothes within minutes, but he barely noticed. His mind was louder than the storm, filled with memories he had ignored for too long. He remembered how Amara used to laugh easily when they first married, how she would tease him about taking life too seriously. Somewhere between the years of struggle, unpaid bills, and silent expectations, that laughter had faded. He told himself it was normal. He told himself this was what marriage looked like in the real world. As he moved through the narrow paths of the village, he began to realize how little he truly knew about his wife's inner world. He had never asked her how the pregnancy felt, never asked if the weight on her body also weighed on her spirit. In his mind, providing shelter and food was enough. Love to him was duty. But tonight, duty felt empty. The village was unusually quiet. Doors were shut tight against the storm, lamps turned low. No one was outside. No one to ask. Sola's fear deepened as he reached the small market square. Amara liked to sit there during the day, resting under the big tree when walking became too much. But at night, especially in a storm, it was a dangerous place. He called her name again, his voice breaking as thunder cracked overhead. As he stood there, soaked and trembling, a memory surfaced. Earlier that week, Amara had winced while lifting a bucket of water. She had brushed it off when he noticed, saying she was fine. He remembered rolling his eyes, telling her she worried too much. Now that moment returned with sharp clarity, cutting through his chest with regret. What if she had been in pain all along? What if tonight was not about pride, but survival? Back at the house, the fire had gone out. The walls felt colder. Sola searched the rooms again, hoping somehow she had returned. But the silence only grew heavier. He noticed small things he had never paid attention to before. The folded baby clothes Amara had been washing slowly over days. The half-finished cloth she planned to wrap the newborn in. Each item felt like an accusation he could not answer. Outside, the storm showed no mercy. The rain turned paths into rivers and the night seemed endless. Sola began to wonder if Amara felt unseen in this marriage, if his words had finally pushed her past the point of quiet endurance. In many African homes, women carried pain in silence, taught that patience was strength. Amara had been patient. Too patient. As Sola stepped back into the rain, something else unsettled him. A strange stillness hung in the air, the kind that comes before something irreversible. His heart pounded as a distant sound reached his ears. It was faint, almost lost in the storm, but it made him stop cold. He could not tell if it was a cry, the wind, or something far worse. He stood there, frozen between hope and fear, realizing that whatever lay ahead was bigger than anger, bigger than pride. Somewhere in the darkness, the woman carrying his child faced the night alone. And Sola knew, deep down, that by the time he found her, nothing between them would ever be the same again. Sola forced himself to move toward the sound, every step heavy with fear. The rain stung his eyes, but he kept going, holding on to the hope that it was Amara he had heard. His thoughts were scattered, torn between guilt and worry. He remembered how proud he had been when Amara told him she was pregnant. How he had promised to protect her and the child. Somewhere along the way, that promise had turned into pressure, and pressure had turned into anger. As he reached the edge of the village, he noticed faint footprints in the wet soil, half-washed by the rain. His heart leaped. They were small, careful steps, like someone moving slowly, cautiously. He followed them as best he could, whispering Amara's name into the night. Each time the thunder answered instead, his chest tightened. Not far from there lived Mama Kemi, an elderly woman known for her wisdom and sharp tongue. Her lamp was still on, a soft glow cutting through the rain. Desperate, Sola knocked on her door. When she opened it and saw his soaked face and frightened eyes, her expression changed. He asked if she had seen Amara. Mama Kemi paused before shaking her head slowly. But her silence spoke louder than her answer. She came here earlier, the old woman finally said. She was tired. Very tired. Sola's breath caught. Mama Kemi explained that Amara had rested for a short while, refusing food, her hands shaking as she held her belly. She had thanked her and left before the rain grew worse, saying she needed air, space, peace. Mama Kemi looked straight into Sola's eyes. A woman does not leave her home at night in the rain for no reason. Those words stayed with him as he walked away. They echoed in his mind louder than the storm. Sola realized this was not just about one insult. It was about months of feeling unheard, unseen. Amara had carried more than a child. She had carried loneliness. Meanwhile, Amara moved slowly through the darkness, her body aching, her emotions raw. Each step sent pain through her back, but staying in the house felt worse. The word he had used replayed in her mind, cutting deeper each time. Lazy. She had given her strength, her youth, her dreams. Yet in his eyes it was not enough. She loved her husband, but that night, love felt heavy. She stopped under a large tree near the stream, sheltering herself as best she could from the rain. The sound of rushing water frightened her. The stream was swollen, angry, just like her thoughts. She placed both hands on her belly, whispering softly to the baby, trying to calm herself. Fear mixed with determination. She did not know where she was going, only that she needed to breathe without being judged. Back on the path, Sola struggled with another truth. In the village, men were rarely taught how to express care. Harsh words were often passed down like tradition. He remembered his father shouting at his mother, believing control was the same as leadership. He had sworn to be different, yet here he was repeating the same pattern. The realization made him feel small. As the storm raged on, the village seemed to watch silently. Neighbors heard his voice calling but stayed behind closed doors, unsure whether to interfere. In many African communities, family matters were private, even when pain spilled into the night. This silence added to the weight Sola carried. He felt alone, facing the consequences of his words without guidance. The sound he had heard earlier came again, clearer this time. It was not a cry but a sharp breath, uneven and strained. Sola's heart pounded as he followed it toward the stream. The path narrowed and the ground became slippery. One wrong step could send him into the rushing water below. At the same time, Amara felt a sudden wave of pain stronger than before. She froze, gripping the tree, fear flashing across her face. The night felt endless, the rain unkind. She wondered if Sola was looking for her or if he had already given up, convinced she was being stubborn. That thought hurt more than the pain in her body. Two hearts beat with fear in different parts of the same storm. Regret pulled one forward, while hurt pushed the other further into the darkness. And as the distance between them slowly closed, neither of them knew what the night still held, or whether love would be enough to face what was coming next. The rain began to fall harder as if the sky itself was warning them both. Sola's lantern flickered with every strong gust of wind, the weak flame struggling to survive. His feet slipped on the muddy ground, but he did not slow down. Fear had taken full control now. Fear of losing Amara. Fear of losing the child. Fear of living the rest of his life knowing his words had pushed her into danger. He reached the edge of the stream and stopped abruptly. The water had risen far beyond its usual level, rushing fast and wild, carrying broken branches and leaves. The sound was deafening. His chest tightened as he scanned the area, lifting the lantern higher. "Amara," he shouted again, his voice cracking, no longer filled with anger but desperation. The storm swallowed most of his words, but he kept calling, refusing to stop. Not far away, Amara struggled to steady her breathing. The pain had returned, stronger this time, stealing the air from her lungs. She leaned against a rock near the stream, rain soaking her hair and clothes. Her body trembled not just from the cold but from fear. She had never imagined being alone like this, at night, pregnant, unsure of what was happening inside her own body. She whispered prayers under her breath, asking for strength, for protection, for her baby to be safe. As lightning split the sky, she caught sight of the swollen water and felt a surge of panic. She tried to stand, but her legs felt weak. For a moment, she wondered if leaving the house had been a mistake. But then Sola's words returned to her mind, sharp and painful. She told herself she needed dignity, needed to feel human again, not like a burden. Back near the stream, Sola noticed something that made his heart skip. A piece of fabric, familiar, caught on a low branch. He recognized it instantly. It was part of Amara's wrapper. His hands shook as he touched it, the reality of how close he was to losing her crashing down on him. He followed the direction it pointed, his breath coming fast and uneven. Each step closer to the water filled him with dread. Memories rushed through his mind. The day they found out she was pregnant. The way she smiled, her eyes shining with hope. The nights she rubbed her belly and spoke softly to the unborn child. He had been there but not present. Strong but not gentle. Now, strength felt useless without compassion. Nearby, Amara heard a distant voice through the storm. At first, she thought it was thunder playing tricks on her mind. Then she heard it again. Her name. Weak but real. Her heart jumped, torn between relief and pain. She wanted to answer, but her voice came out small and broken. She pressed her hand to her belly, breathing slowly, afraid of what the pain might mean. The storm seemed to grow more violent, wind pushing the rain sideways. Sola's lantern went out suddenly, leaving him in darkness. Panic surged through him. He stood still for a moment, listening, trying to hear over the roar of the water. Then he heard it. A soft sound. A strained breath. Close. He moved forward carefully, guided only by sound and instinct. The ground beneath him shifted, and stones rolled toward the stream. One wrong step could send him into the rushing water. His heart hammered as he whispered her name again, his voice barely holding together. In that moment, pride meant nothing. Tradition meant nothing. All that mattered was finding his wife alive. Amara felt another wave of pain rise, stronger than before. She cried out softly, fear filling her chest. The night felt too big, too cruel. She wondered if Sola would reach her in time, or if this storm would take something precious from them both. Tears mixed with rain on her face as she whispered her husband's name, unsure if he could hear her. Two voices, two hearts, separated by darkness and rushing water, drawn toward each other by regret, love, and fear. The storm raged on, hiding what would happen next. And as the night tightened its grip around them, everything they were and everything they could become, balanced on the edge of a single moment. Sola was only a few steps away when the ground beneath him suddenly gave way. Mud slid under his feet, and he fell hard onto his knees, barely stopping himself from sliding toward the rushing stream. His heart leaped into his throat. For a brief moment, he thought the night had finally defeated him. He dug his fingers into the wet soil, pulling himself up, breathing heavily. Fear was no longer quiet inside him. It was loud, sharp, and unforgiving. Before he could move again, another sound cut through the storm. This time it was different. Not Amara's breath. Not thunder. It was a shout. A man's voice calling his name. Sola turned, squinting through the rain, and saw two faint lights moving toward him. Villagers. Someone had finally stepped out of their house. Mama Kemi had not gone back to sleep. After Sola left her door, unease settled deep in her chest. She knew the signs too well. A pregnant woman in distress was never something to ignore. She had woken her nephew and another young man, handed them lanterns and followed them into the storm. Now, seeing the wild stream and Sola's panic-stricken face, her worry doubled. "Where is she?" Mama Kemi asked, her voice firm despite the rain. Sola could barely answer. He pointed toward the darkness near the water. The men exchanged uneasy looks. The stream had already swallowed part of the narrow crossing path. If Amara was nearby, she was in serious danger. At the same time, Amara's strength was fading. The pain had become unfamiliar, sharper, more frightening. Her vision blurred, and the sounds around her felt distant. She tried to move away from the water, but her legs refused to obey. She slipped against the rock, her body lowering slowly to the wet ground. Fear wrapped around her heart. She had always been strong, always endured quietly. But now, her body was asking for help she could no longer give herself. Back near the stream, the group debated what to do. One of the men warned that crossing closer to the water was too risky. Another suggested splitting up. Every second felt precious. Sola stood frozen, torn between rushing forward blindly and listening to reason. His chest burned with guilt. If anything happened to Amara, he knew the village would never forget. More than that, he would never forgive himself. Then it happened. A faint cry, barely audible, drifted through the storm. Mama Kemi raised her hand sharply. Everyone went silent. The sound came again, weak but unmistakable. Amara. It was close, dangerously close to the water. Sola did not wait. He moved toward the sound, ignoring the shouts behind him. One of the men grabbed his arm, warning him about the current, but Sola pulled free. "That's my wife," he said, his voice breaking. "That's my child." For the first time the words carried weight, not pride. As he approached, lightning flashed, revealing Amara on the ground near the stream's edge. Relief and terror crashed into him at once. He called her name, rushing forward, but stopped short when the ground shifted again. The water surged higher, licking at the earth between them. One wrong move could drag them both in. Amara heard his voice and tried to lift her head. Seeing him there, soaked and shaking, stirred something deep inside her. Relief mixed with hurt. She wanted to reach for him, but her body trembled violently. Another wave of pain hit, stronger than anything before, and she cried out despite herself. Mama Kemi reached them moments later, her face tight with concern. One look at Amara told her this was no longer just a search. This was an emergency. She shouted instructions to the men behind her, her voice cutting through the storm. One ran back toward the village, likely to call for more help. Another tried to find a safer path around the water. The rain refused to slow. The stream continued to rise. Sola knelt as close as he dared, tears mixing with rain on his face. He begged Amara to hold on, his voice full of regret and fear. Amara looked at him, her eyes tired but searching, as if trying to understand whether his words now were real or just fear speaking. Around them, the village stirred, lanterns beginning to glow in the distance. But time felt cruelly slow. The storm showed no mercy, and the space between Sola and Amara remained dangerously thin. As the water roared louder and Amara's strength slipped further away, one terrifying truth hung in the air. This night was no longer just about hurtful words. It was about survival. And before it was over, something would be lost or something would be changed forever. The storm seemed to pause, just for a moment, as if the night itself was listening. Sola lowered himself slowly onto the wet ground, close enough now to reach Amara without risking the rushing water. His hands trembled as he stretched them out, not touching her at first, afraid even that might cause harm. His voice broke as he spoke her name again, softer this time, stripped of anger, stripped of pride. He apologized not with long speeches, but with tears that came freely, honestly, as the rain continued to fall. Mama Kemi moved quickly, her age forgotten in the urgency of the moment. She knelt beside Amara, placing a steady hand on her shoulder and another on her belly, listening, watching, understanding. Her face grew serious. This was no longer just pain from fear or stress. Something was happening, and it was happening fast. She told Sola to stay calm, but her eyes warned him this was serious. The men returned with more villagers, lanterns lighting up the riverbank like scattered stars. The storm began to weaken, rain slowing to a heavy drizzle, but the danger remained. Together they formed a careful plan, creating a human path to guide Amara away from the water. Each step was slow, tense, filled with whispered prayers. Amara cried out again, gripping Sola's arm tightly, her strength nearly gone. Sola stayed beside her the entire time, his body shielding her from slipping, his words now full of encouragement instead of judgment. He told her she was strong. He told her she was not lazy. He told her he saw her, truly saw her for the first time. Those words, simple but sincere, seemed to give her just enough strength to keep going. By the time they reached Mama Kemi's house, the storm had begun to clear. Inside, the room was warm, filled with the smell of herbs and the soft glow of lamplight. The village women took over gently, guiding Amara to lie down. Sola was asked to wait outside, pacing back and forth, his heart pounding louder than any thunder that had come before. The night felt endless again, but this time for a different reason. Then came the cry. Sure. Clear. Alive. Sola froze, unsure if he was breathing. A moment later, Mama Kemi stepped out, her face tired but calm. She nodded slowly. The baby had arrived. Against the storm. Against fear. Against everything that could have gone wrong. Relief crashed over Sola so hard his legs gave way, and he dropped to the ground, crying openly in front of everyone. When he was finally allowed inside, he saw Amara holding the child, her face pale but peaceful. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. The anger of the night felt distant now, replaced by exhaustion and fragile understanding. Sola knelt beside her, whispering another apology, promising change, not loudly, but with a seriousness that felt real. But as the room settled into quiet, Mama Kemi's expression shifted. She asked the women to step aside and examine the baby more closely. The silence returned, thick and uneasy. Sola's heart tightened again. After a long moment, Mama Kemi spoke softly. The child was alive and strong, yes, but the birth had come earlier than expected. There would be challenges ahead. Care would be needed. Patience. Support. This was not the end of their trial, only the beginning. As dawn approached, light slowly crept into the room. Outside, the river calmed, the storm finally defeated. The village breathed again. Sola sat quietly beside Amara, holding her hand, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. He had been given a second chance, not just at being a father, but at being a better husband. Just as peace seemed to settle, Mama Kemi said one final thing that stayed with him. This child came early, she said, because some lessons cannot wait. Sola looked down at his wife and newborn, realizing that the night he spoke one careless word had changed him forever. And though the storm had passed, the true test of his promise was only just beginning. Morning arrived gently, as if the night had taken everything harsh with it. The rain stopped completely, leaving the village washed and quiet. Sunlight touched the roofs and paths, revealing the marks of the storm, broken branches, soft mud, but also a strange sense of peace. Inside Mama Kemi's house, Amara rested, her breathing slow and steady, the newborn sleeping against her chest. Sola sat beside her, afraid to move, afraid to break the fragile calm. He watched his wife's face closely, noticing lines of strength he had never truly seen before. Amara looked tired, but there was something else there too, a calm determination. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but clear. She told him how heavy the months had been, how alone she had felt, how the word he used that night had cut deeper than any pain in her body. Sola listened without interrupting. This time he did not defend himself. He did not explain. He simply listened. Outside, villagers gathered quietly, offering help without noise or judgment. Food was prepared. Warm water was brought. In small African communities, storms were shared experiences, and so were their lessons. Mama Kemi spoke to the women and later to Sola, reminding him that strength in a man was not only in his hands, but in his heart and his words. He nodded, humbled, knowing this was advice he could not ignore again. As the day passed, news spread through the village. Some whispered about the dangerous night, others about the baby who arrived early but strong. But most spoke about change. About how Sola had searched through the storm, how he had knelt in the mud, how fear had stripped him of pride. In a place where men rarely admitted fault, his tears had spoken loudly. Amara named the child with care, choosing a name that meant hope after struggle. When she placed the baby in Sola's arms for the first time, his hands shook. The weight was small, but the responsibility felt enormous. He understood now that providing food and shelter was not enough. Love required patience. Marriage required kindness. Parenthood required humility. Days later, as the river fully calmed and life returned to routine, Sola changed in small but noticeable ways. He spoke gently. He helped without being asked. He listened more than he talked. The word lazy never crossed his lips again. Not toward his wife. Not toward anyone. He learned that pregnancy was not weakness and rest was not failure. Amara healed slowly, supported by the village women and watched closely by Mama Kemi. Though challenges remained with the early birth, the child grew stronger with each passing day. And with every quiet night that followed, the memory of the storm stayed with them, not as fear but as a reminder. Sometimes Sola would stand outside at night, listening to the calm river, thinking about how close he came to losing everything. One careless word. One night of pride. And a lesson that arrived wrapped in rain, fear, and finally love. In that African home, a story was rewritten. Not because the storm came but because a man chose to change after it passed.